Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is part two of the session, A World of Opportunities with FIWARE Release 8.0. This particular session, a panel where we will be covering what is being the development of NGSI-LD all around the world. We have a great panel of speakers with us. And then as a second part, we will be covering a bit of activities connected to FIWARE and ongoing during release 8 and following releases that have to do with each of the topics covered in our roadmap. This second part is a bit of a kind of a introduction to the use case sessions that will come right afterwards. But let's start with the panel very quickly without further delay. And let me introduce first the speakers, the panelists. First starting with Emilio Davila. He is head of ICT standardization sector within the European Commission, the DG Connect. Responsible of coordinating all actions related to ICT standardization, not only within Europe, but at an international level. Second panelist, we have Inder Gopal. He's the CEO of the India Urban Data Exchange Initiative, supporting the National Smart City Program in India. He's also a research professor at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and he has held executive leadership positions with some of the most well-known tech companies, and has also founded and built up and successfully sold two venture-funded startup companies. Yasunori Mochizuki, here with us from Tokyo. Many thanks for being here, because we know all that is quite late over there. He's NEC fellow and is member of the board of directors of the FIWARE Foundation, and an active innovation policy proposals, global ecosystem building activities related to a smart society and industry, bringing thought leadership in those areas. And he is also a Smart City Project Fellow at the World Economic Forum. Then Gonzalo de la Rosa, he is welcome from Latin America. He's executive director of Cities of the Future Institute in Argentina. He's coordinating, and his institute is coordinating actually the activities of the FIWARE we have in Argentina, which is one of the most active in the Latin America region. And he's also chairing the FIWARE Mission Support Committee, and quite involved in the development of the Argentina network of smart tourism destinations, and actually bringing FIWARE application in that domain. Marius to finish this list of panelists coming from South Africa. So we have, as you see, panelists from all over the world. He is a member of the FIWARE Technical Steering Committee and managing director of TecLab in South Africa. He's currently working on everything that has to do with the smart territory concepts for local provinces, and is quite involved in coordinating what I think is the first proof of concept of FIWARE in South Africa. So thank you everyone for being here, and let's start now with questions. And my first question is to Inder. Definition of a standard mechanism for data exchange within a city and also across cities is at the core of IUDX initiative in India. Could you please elaborate a bit more about this initiative the level of adoption of the standards within this initiative, and particularly NGSI-LD, which is the topic of today.
Sure, sure. I guess good afternoon or good evening to everybody. Just a couple of words on the Smart City program in India. It was started about 6 years ago by the Ministry of Urban Affairs. And what they did is they picked 100 cities across India, some large, some small, and said, we're going to use these as essentially examples of how to create smart cities. And there's a fair amount of central government investment. And this program has been moving along, reasonably well, with one caveat, right? And the caveat is that, what was observed is that these were kind of independent activities. There was very little reuse of, learning, reuse of code. There were applications that were created in one city were not able to be, moved to another city. So there was, there was really the opportunity for cities to learn from each other was not happening. And a lot of it was because, these were closed systems, proprietary systems that were being built. And while they were delivering value in the city, they were not really generating the opportunity for sharing. So we started thinking, and the Smart City program director, was sort of very interested in getting some level of standardization, getting some level of interoperability. So we started talking, and it became clear that what was missing was really the standardization of APIs, standardization of architecture, the disaggregation of the systems in such a way that you have a clean middleware layer that aggregates data, provides the ability to find data, and applications and sensors sort of above and below this layer. So that's what that was initiated, the India Urban Data Exchange. So what that really is a middleware layer, right? It's in fact a platform, a cloud-based platform that works across all of Indian smart cities. And it provides the ability to exchange data. It doesn't store data, it provides the ability to exchange data. So it provides the ability to find data, the ability to control who gets access to the data, and the ability to actually transfer the data. Does this through standardized APIs, standardized data models. And obviously, our intent was to work very closely with the global community to get the best of breed. So we selected NGSI-LD as the approach for what I call our resource server, which does the standardization, the movement of the data. We have created some new APIs to do resource finding and access controls, and we hope to share them with the global community. And of course, we are working with the FIWARE team as in the TM forum as part of as to do the smart data models, which some of you have heard of. And so our intent very much is to work in the global community to create these standards. It's been an extremely interesting couple of years that we've been doing this, and now the system is actually deployed in 10 Indian cities. And if you go to iudx.org.in, you can get a lot more details.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. And actually, you have started, but really accelerating with the number of cities that are growing as we speak, right?
Yeah, we have another 15 cities. Another 15 cities coming in the next year. There's been some slowdown because of obviously the very bad situation with COVID, but I think things have started to ease up a little bit. So we are starting to get back into the deployment and the bringing up of the exchange and all in another tranche of cities.
Mm-hmm. Great. Question to Emilio. NGSI-LD, and you see here that is getting traction here in India, is actually being extensively referred within the European Union 2021 rolling plan on ICT standardization you are responsible of. May you elaborate a bit more on this plan in general, and how do you position NGSI-LD within the plan, and what are the overall ICT standardization perspectives, and how do you see NGSI-LD playing a role in the overall ICT standardization landscape?
Yeah, thank you, Juanjo, for this question. First, for the invitation to join this extremely interesting session, and also for the question. Let me say a few words about the ICT standardization rolling plan. This is a tool, a planning tool that we develop in the European Union in cooperation with representative of ICT standardization stakeholders, so standard development organization, industry, user associations, our member states, within the multi-stakeholder platform, which is an expert group on ICT standardization. And in this rolling plan, we structure by different chapters, by different sectors. We explain the EU policy documents related to that topic. So, for instance, you have topics on 5G and beyond, on e-health, on the Internet of Things, on emergency communication, name them. And then we explain which policy documents, either communication explaining our policy in the EU, or regulatory documents that may make reference to those standards. And then importantly, we identify ICT standardization needs that we believe, so which standards are needed, which technical specifications are needed to be produced in order to support our policies in those areas. And finally, something that may be of interest of the audience is that there is also in each chapter a mapping of the activities of the different standard development organizations around the world in that topic. And of course, NGSI-LD is referenced in several parts of the rolling plan, as you can imagine, because we believe as an important specification is first in the IoT chapter, where it's explained the interest of NGSI-LD and the activities that the IISc on context information modeling made, developing this API, but also the high-level data model linked to it, as a way to promote standards, platforms, middleware platforms for and APIs for Internet of Things applications. But it's even more extensively referencing the chapter on big data, where it's explained that, of course, NGSI-LD can enhance access and reuse of real-time data. And we've seen the example of IUDX made by our Indian colleague there. And there, it's explained the NGSI-LD, and also there is reference to the FIWARE solution that has been integrated within the program that we have in Europe, the Connected Europe Facility, which develops pilots for different digital and including government applications. And there, this context broker building block being developed for us is important. We also promote NGSI-LD as part of the large-scale pilot synchronicity, which is providing applications for smart cities much in line with what the previous speaker was explaining. And there we identify the two actions in particular. One, to continue with these activities to develop the NGSI-LD specification and the different brokers and actions like FIWARE is doing now, in order to provide for these interoperability standards that could provide the glue for the different implementation. And then, of course, continue the support of standardization activities related to NGSI-LD and data management at different levels. So without research projects, without pilot programs, and in particular, giving the example of the activities being done, for instance, within the contents of FIWARE brokers. And why? Because we believe it's important to have open standards, and in particular, this kind of APIs, allowing for interoperability solutions that then will allow the implementations with different applications by any players in the world. And for instance, FIWARE is one clear example of these different implementations that can be used. And it's also something that we believe will come in very interesting, the extension to the digital twins applications. That is possibly something is not already in this version of the rolling plan, but this may come in the next version. So we will continue the support of these open standards. Thank you very much. That's
okay, very, very comprehensive and complete question. And actually, Emilio is really representing this kind of endorsement at a more kind of official, from official bodies. And here a question to Yasunori, Marius, and Gonzalo. All of you, we can go through each of you is, to what extent the compliance with the standards in your countries is actually taken as something rather relevant and strategic for the policy decision makers, and how do you perceive that in your country? Is that important? Is not that much important, the aspect about standardization, and also how important it is that such standards get back from an open source implementation. We can start first with, let's say, Marius, I see you on the stage, then Yasunori, and then Gonzalo. So Marius.
So thank you for the invitation. It's really nice to be here today. What I would say is at the heart of everything implemented in terms of smart regions and smart cities, we discovered in our work that the political will stands at the very core of that, right? So it's essential to drive all these projects forward. Those, they need to be adopted into policy and eventually with strategic alignment with the national goals, regional goals, and so forth. And what we found was locally in South Africa, we don't yet have a clear definition of policies with regards to information and automation, which is ultimately what these technologies will enable. And I think the ultimate outcome for us would be that we approve a framework like what the FIWARE Foundation sets out to provide. And it's an extremely clear common language that can be used for the communication amongst the governmental systems, the private sector systems, and industry. And it's also then similarly, the common data models is the one thing that will drive through this common language or common platform through the NGSI-LD protocol, allow the future of interaction. And I agree with the sentiment that digital twins are ultimately what we're after, because through them we will be able to enable the complex predictions and even prescriptive analytics that we need to better manage the resources and automate our processes.
Yasunori, your perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, in Japan, first of all, already 5 cities have implemented FIWARE-based platform, and there are actually dozens of more under planning to implement. And talking about the standards, yes, basically the answer is yes. But which standards and how to implement is a really tough question for each city level officers. So it is where the national guidance and harmonization mechanism and leadership is necessary. And along with such a context, Japan last year, Japanese government formulated smart city a reference architecture that is to be shared nationwide. And later on, there is another smart city initiative of the government called Super City. And they're making call, but at the same time, they have materialized the reference architecture into what they call an interoperability guideline. For instance, talking about a preference of using the open standard APIs and also distributed broker configuration. Yeah, that's where Japan is. And talking about open source, I would honestly say that awareness to its importance is right now under the developing stage. But in that context, I'm really excited to see the Code for Japan has joined the membership of FIWARE Foundation, just welcomed by Ulrich yesterday in his grand opening. And the Code for Japan is a big driver of open source from the demand side, I mean citizens and communities, and to come up with a bottom-up approach solution building. And the Code for Japan is very visible and influential in the smart city space in Japan, and they've started an initiative called DIY Smart Cities, which of course stands for do it yourself, and from the bottom-up approach. And here is where the open source means a lot, and actually already several cities have highly welcomed this idea and started collaborating with Code for Japan. So this is basically the situation right now in Japan.
Thank you. What about you, Gonzalo? We cannot hear you, Gonzalo. Some problem with the microphone. We cannot hear you. No, you're on mute. Now unmute. I guess you can. There's a bit this inconvenience with the use. No, we cannot hear you. No.
Juanjo,
So,
it could be beneficial if Gonzalo goes out and in again. That sometimes solves the problem.
So sometimes that solves the problem. So I suggest you drop out and close even the session in the browser and log in again. And so therefore we will move and catch up with Gonzalo when he comes back. Question to Inder. You talk about the benefits that the standards like NGSI-LD could bring in creating this harmonization within India smart cities activities, but thinking more in a global landscape, because the FIWARE community, for instance, and which bring all these people already working with NGSI-LD is all over the world. Do you see there an opportunity actually of applications being developed in India, being transferred to other regions, the other way around, be able to take advantage of best practices of other regions? How do you see this developing?
Yeah, I see two advantages really of being part of a global community, right? One is kind of related to, I think, your previous question and what Yasunori-san was also talking about, which is really to create a global open source community, right? I mean, I personally, and I think increasingly there's broader awareness, believe that any national infrastructure or any infrastructure that kind of serves public, right, as opposed to proprietary uses, should be open source, right? Because it shouldn't be under the control of a particular company. And I think the emphasis on open source, I think, really needs to be made quite strong as we start building public infrastructure, software infrastructure. And I think that is something that is facilitated very much by having a global community. So the strength of the platform, I mean, for example, we have created, because we are dealing with certain unique situations in India, we have created a consent mechanism for access to data. We have created a catalog system, which is, allows browsing of data, and we are very pleased to share this with the FIWARE community and bring things back into the FIWARE community, which hopefully can benefit others. And similarly, my hope is that what we will do, through working with FIWARE and with others, is really create this global open source effort, which supports cities across the world. Not every implementation is going to be identical, but to create kind of almost like a catalog of components, similar to what FIWARE has already done, but in a broader way. So I think that's one very strong value of a global community. I think the second is in standards, of course, right? I mean, I think we're working with FIWARE on the smart data standards. These are, again, there are going to be differences regionally. Each, in India, we're going to have slightly different emphasis in terms of our data models. Taking kind of a collective view and trying to bring the best of breed, on a global basis, I think is really, really important. The more we can kind of, I think, collaborate, and these are not areas where necessarily you can really differentiate, right? I mean, it's not like, oh, I build the best, data sharing platform and somehow, there's some unique special technology. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, but ultimately, this is kind of common infrastructure, and if we do it right as a global community, we can raise, the level of everybody, right? And I think that's really what I hope, we can do, working together with FIWARE and with others on the call.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, a very big potential. And actually, I think that potential is what is also attracting other regions that perhaps are not that much developed or with such a big programs like in India or in Europe, but then they can see how they may reduce the cost of really getting into the first league because they may reuse what is there. And that I see Gonzalo already has joined. Let's try and precisely connecting with this question, how do you see in Latin America things developing regarding smart cities, and to what extent this fact that the NGSI standard like NGSI-LD has that widely adoption in Europe and now taking this momentum in India, is that something that is helping to develop the opportunity around smart cities, for instance, in Latin America? What? We cannot hear you again. No. So, okay. So let's try. While you try to fix this, I move to Marius, and I think the same question works for you, right? Because I don't know to what extent there is any big program about smart cities in South Africa or initiatives like the ones we have been explaining in Europe or India, and now I will be asking Yasunori again in Japan regarding Japan. But what about South Africa? How ready is South Africa for the smart cities?
In terms of readiness, we have adopted a policy for the fourth industrial revolution, which is being executed by the government. But there is really still a great need for more infrastructure and skills development, in general. And I think one of the things, as you obviously know, is that there is a great need for organizational readiness by implementing these in specific governmental organizations and industries. So the policy in itself has started. So there's a lot of work to do, and I believe that the standards adoption, which is relevant here, is ultimately where FIWARE can play an incredible role.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yasunori, I cannot pass this panel without asking you about something that has always attracted a lot of my attention, which is the concept of Society 5.0 in Japan, where I think you expand and go beyond what is the concept of smart cities and really connecting different domains and with exchange of data for the benefit of society. Could you develop this question, and how do you see also a potential of adoption of NGSI-LD in that space?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the basic vision of Society 5.0 is almost what Juan just touched. Probably I'll talk about three features. One is about technology vision. When it was formulated in the year of maybe 2015, tech vision was called a cyber physical system. But I do think it is quite similar to what now people talk by saying digital twin. So I do believe NGSI-LD will play an increasingly important role also for the realization of Society 5.0. And in that sense, of course, earlier today, we learned a lot about the new release of FIWARE 8.0, which now we find many generic enablers supporting NGSI, not just the context broker. The second and third features are not technical. The second is the interoperability. And the society under Society 5.0, we need interoperability not just for just within each city, even they talk about across domain data exchange, but across cities and regions, because we want to make a society. We want to transform the entire Japanese society, and further, hopefully, spans over industry players. And the third point is the technology governance, probably built under what Japan used to be the democracy. And for this second and third aspect, it is great, exciting to see the two important organizations, the Open Agile Smart Cities and International Data Space Association, formally announced collaboration with and signed in yesterday's grand opening with the FIRE Foundation. Of course, this collaboration is to make the real thing and move the world forward, but it also delivers a very clear and very straightforward message also to the Japan's policy makers and how the entire, transformation should proceed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And a question to Emilio. Do you see now that, NGSI-LD is something that was initially born in Europe, is really, gaining traction and taking off in countries which are continents like India, but also South Africa, Latin America, and so on. So, Emilio, how do you assess the fact that NGSI-LD is really starting to get adopted so widely around the world, and may this bring light to potential more formal collaboration between the regions, trying to be able to exchange those best practices and so on? How do you see that?
Yeah, thank you, Juanjo. Well, we believe that this is a very good news, and having international global standard is definitively something that we support in the European Union, because there is access to the markets, the allow scalability, the production development of affordable solution, avoiding locking situation, and at the end is better benefit of the citizens, because they provide the ground for different implementation, including in particular open source, because we also support strongly, and in particular in the smart cities context, having open source, real open source solution there. And that's why we promote this cooperation on ICT standardization globally. This is part of our international policy. And for instance, we have a project called Indico, funded by the Commission, that support the cooperation between Europe and different regions, and such as India, Japan, Republic of Korea, United States, China, and Brazil, Latin America. And within this context, we have in particular cooperation around the smart city standards. I didn't mention before, I forgot to do that, but I knew that it was coming. Of course, in the rolling plan chapter of smart cities, there is a strong also mention to NGSI-LD and how they can work on top of the one platform or the ontologies produced in SAREF. And we had these workshops, an exchange of best practice and of views with Japan, with South Korea, with India, and we realized we are in common grounds, and there is indeed a big ground of cooperation, and involving also the cities, or what the previous speaker said, having open agile smart cities representatives that were there and talking about this promotion of the minimum interoperability mechanisms, 1M2M standards, the interwork through the NGSI-LD, and even the ontologies to SAREF. So we believe it's important. We have, in particular, for instance, with India, not only Indico, but also a bilateral cooperation project, where we will be glad to cooperate in this IUDX initiative, we are already cooperating on data. And one of the points to further cooperate, for instance, is how NGSI-LD could be applied for smart cities, and then allowing also to open source implementation later on, and this was mentioned. So very good news, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have been talking about smart cities a lot, but NGSI-LD we know is something with potential in other domains. And then a bit of question to all of you: how do you see NGSI-LD, let's say, adopted in other domains, and to what extent this adoption in smart cities may pave the way or open the door to be considered in other domains, given the fact that I think as the levels of digitization are increasing, more and more people see that there is the need for exchanging data, not just within organizations like cities or among cities, but also between the cities and the ports, or the cities and the factories and the buildings and the malls and everyone all together. So who can willing to take some of these questions?
Yeah, I can mention a little bit of what we're doing in India on this, right? So we started this work in the context of the urban smart city program, but I think we've observed that a lot of the core technology, a lot of the infrastructure that we're building, a lot of the concepts really have broad applicability. And so we have started working, we were initially working with the Ministry of Urban Affairs. Now we are starting to work with the Ministry of Electronics and IT, which has actually got kind of broad responsibility across, a whole bunch of different government programs and government initiatives. And so we are starting to look at, the healthcare sector, the education sector, maybe the industrial sector. These are all in potential, places where, some of the ideas, will be from IUDX can be translated. So we definitely see very, very broad potential applicability. I mean, the concept of a data exchange really is very fundamental. It's just a way of transferring data, a kind of let's say a lighter touch way of transferring data and sharing data than something like a data warehouse or a data lake, or the traditional data sharing mechanisms in enterprises. And so I think this approach has very broad applicability really in any loosely coupled set of environment where you have a set of data assets that you want to take advantage of. And I think the other thing I should mention is and I know the FIWARE team is also looking very closely at this, is the corporate sector, right? And I think there's a recognition that a data exchange is actually something that's of great value very often in the context of a corporate deployment, in an enterprise deployment. And this is also something potentially, that we see as of value, particularly in the context of our open source initiative. We can make this available, to commercial vendors to take and deploy in a corporate setting. So I definitely agree with Juanjo. There's a huge applicability of this core technology, very broadly, and the urban sector is really the initial driver of this.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Yasunori, your perspective? Because I think also in Japan, this vision about really breaking the silos between different organizations is part of this Society 5.0 vision, right?
Yeah, and I basically agree with what Inder talked about. Basically, the urban sector is the driver of this NGSI-LD or semantic type of data exchange and value extraction, value creation mechanism. In Japan, actually, before the Smart City Initiative penetrated nationwide, there were several attempts at a nationwide initiative to develop a data exchange for a domain-specific one, like for agriculture and the disaster management and so on. And now, after having this interoperability data exchange, interoperable data exchange mechanism, coming into smart city space, this is a time that we should think more seriously about how to integrate the interoperability across these sectors. And what's also good about the urban sector is that the smart cities have something like somewhat like a elder brother, which is open data, which is also a public, data-related value creation, closely connected with the public sector, and of course the linked data type of effort has been there for a decade. So that I also expect as a driver to be coupled with smart city initiative, and the open data is also now inviting private sector business data that could be also disclosed or published. So I think this altogether with open data and the smart city initiatives, the urban sector will drive this, semantic data utilization, also in Japan, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Marius, in South Africa, you are in the first proof of concept with FIWARE. What are the next steps you believe? What things have to happen in South Africa to really, have an acceleration in adoption of NGSI-LD, not only in cities but other sectors?
Well, in our case, I think it has a lot to do with skills development. The more we can educate and enhance the skills around the open standards and the open technologies, that will certainly lead to better innovation. The other aspect is ultimately we're trying to improve our relationship with the planet, and the exchange of information is not only relevant to our economic activities and political activities, but really how we have our footprint on this, our home, the place we live. And if we can find the skills and the innovations that meet these challenges head on, and optimize our use of the resources and our relationship with the planet as such by understanding our impact and our use of resources, then I think also what we're locally looking at is at some point we'll definitely benefit greatly from creating an iHub where this skills development and exchange can happen. Where the innovations can be driven, and but I'm definitely working towards that. I think that is what we need to do locally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we are approaching the end of what is our session, and but I would like to finish with one general question also to the floor, and I would like to hear in this respect, particularly the opinion of from Emilio, and then later we'll formulate the very last question. But this first one, to what extent do you think these standards are helping to startups and entrepreneurs going to be able to capture opportunities in your region? Is a standard a way to really promote opportunities, democratize those opportunities, as we like to say? Emilio and some others' opinion on this?
Yeah, thank you, Juanjo. We believe that having common standards, international standard, is a big opportunity for, and in particular for SMEs and startups that can have open access to the specification, and on top of them, then develop their own applications without depending on the control or being locked into a particular technology developer or suppliers. Not only that, it also provide access to other markets that are using these common standards as well in an easier way. So for that reason, we will continue from the EDC to promote the development of common standards and as well as open source implementation, because because we believe it's really benefits not only for the citizens, but also for the different business and in particular SMEs and startups. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilio. Others visions? I see Gonzalo. I don't know if you have been able. No. Okay. Anyways, sorry to hear. We have a full program about FIWARE in LATAM this evening. So actually, this is a good sign and expression that really is raising interest in LATAM. Inder, you wanted to say something, but let's do briefly to just leave to the very final question. So you wanted to say about the startups and SMEs?
Yeah, no, I wanted to emphasize, I think, what you've already said, which is that I see startups really as the primary, really the primary beneficiary of these kinds of open standards and open, well, I guess, open platforms. For large companies, you can negotiate, bilateral relationships with the cities or with the vendors and create, ad hoc standards. But startups don't have that ability, right? So they need, well-established, global standards as much as possible. And I think it dramatically makes it easier for them to, create innovative new solutions, which perhaps otherwise the barrier to entry would have been too high. So I think that's a key thing. The other thing I just want to briefly mention is, and this is perhaps, in the context of a previous question, is one of the real advantages I see from the global community, the relationship with FIWARE is also creating a global source of applications, right? A global marketplace of applications, where we can find some vendor in Spain who is doing smart parking in Barcelona or whatever, and then we can maybe take that, have that vendor come to Bangalore and maybe deploy that solution with perhaps a small amount of modification. So those kinds of opportunities are really enormously valuable, and that's another key aspect of standards like NGSI-LD and the work that the FIWARE Foundation is doing in trying to create a partner ecosystem.
Thank you, Inder. So let's now close the panel with a question to all. I think it has been really great exchange during the whole panel, but now, unfortunately, we have to finish. But I would like to give each and every of you an opportunity to make a final statement, a very sharp, bold, short statement about key messages you want to deliver and you want the audience to bring within. So let's start with Yasunori. What would be your final statements and thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to first say that NEC is contributing to FIWARE ecosystem in a global fashion. Adoption in the regions like Japan, Europe, and India, but also the Heidelberg team working intensively on IISc SIM, and also the Lindsay Frost in the ETSI board, and also developing NGSI-LD generic enablers. And our NEC's India team are contributing by working to India Urban Data Exchange. So, but I really, NEC really appreciates collaboration with the entire FIWARE ecosystem, because what advances the standard adoption in each region is driven basically by use cases, successful use cases and outcomes on the solutions, on the ecosystem formation. So we are really happy and committed to work with you all guys in the FIWARE ecosystem for the further global expansion of the standard adoption. Thanks.
Thank you, Yasunori. Marius, final thought, final statement?
Yes, I'm very excited that we are busy implementing in two separate POCs in South Africa with the government, and on the other hand, through a collaborative governance environmental monitoring collaboration, and specifically focused on water security. And then our focus for the time being is going to be on the skills development around the FIWARE open technologies, which I believe offers us great opportunity.
Thank you. Inder, final thought on your side, statement?
Yeah, let me just leave this. I mean, I think we should think a little bit about the way we develop these standards, right? I mean, these are not telecom standards, right? I mean, things like NGSI-LD. These are software API standards, and they don't need to have the same formal methodology and process and interoperability and rigor that telecom standards have. And I think, if you try to take the same process that we have used to develop telecom standards and apply it here, I think we will slow down, and we will perhaps result in something that's not that valuable. So I think we've got to understand that these standards are they're software standards. They're very closely allied with open source. Understand the relationship between open source development and the standards creation, and take a much more kind of dynamic, experience-driven standardization process, as opposed to coming at it from a very formal and structured approach, which obviously works in the telecom space.
Mm-hmm. Let's final try with Gonzalo. If at least you were able to make a final statement. No, you tell apparently not. Okay, that's fine. So we close with Emilio. Your final statement from your side, and with this we close the panel. Emilio, you are muted. You are muted.
Yes,
Emilio.
sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was saying that I'm very sorry not to be having been able to listen from Gonzalo, but okay, so it's live. And this shows also the importance of having common standards that we can use from the different regions, and we have seen that in this COVID-19 crisis. I agree with what has been said, the importance of these standards for having more applications, more involvement of SMEs at an international global level. We have seen much better that having global standards that really silos or with fragmentation that could lead to fragmented markets there was. I agree that it's important to have agile methods. Very important in standardization is to have as much people be involved as much as possible to define the different requirements that they would like to see in the standards. Something that I also agree is the importance to have well-defined interaction between standardization and open source communities, and in particular for this kind of standards that we are talking. And again, I think NGSI-LD is a good example of the advantages of having these open standards being applied at the international level, and let's keep on cooperating on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you summarized very well what is behind and what is the values and underneath NGSI-LD. So thank you all the panelists for being here. It was a pity, Gonzalo, that we could not hear you, but well, sometimes these things happen. But we are very much aware of the good developments in Latin America, thanks to your institute and the FIWARE Hub in Argentina. And now we move to the second part of the session. And I invite Francisco to share the presentation we will use across the session. Will be a kind of an introduction precisely to the sessions that will come afterwards, which are more focused on use cases. And whenever you are ready and can share the screen,
I am
Francisco.
It will appear in a moment.
And thank you to the panelists. You are free to leave the stage whenever you want. It's a bit up to you. Thank you.
Okay. My guess is that it will be appearing. Can you see it?
It's coming. Yeah. Now we see the screen. So roadmap activities, and I think the first one is we are going to cover digital twin data spaces, blockchain, artificial intelligence, robotics. So let's start with the first digital twins, and I think that was Frank, right?
Yes. Hello, thank you for giving the opportunity to present what is being done in the context of the digital twins. So next slide, Francisco, please. So our vision about digital twins in the FIWARE Technical Steering Committee and Associated Working Group is that, as said before, NGSI-LD specifications, strengths are it is because it is both a data model and an API. So it really allows to interact with the data models, and it's not a pure data model or pure interface. It's both together. And that's because of that we are convinced that this NGSI-LD API is a right way to build a complete ecosystem to interact with digital twins, to build, to access, to manage digital twins, whereas a data model which is associated to it is really well placed to ensure access and exchange across digital twin data and from digital twins. If we look at what is being done today already, and we'll see it in the use case later on, simply straightforward from the enablers available in the FIWARE Foundation and from the specification, you can have digital twin representation made from a simple entity, what we call the thin twin, a more complex graph of entities having properties and relations. So system twins, or even going further, building your own system of system twins. And there you can query, okay, what is your current state, or what has been your state in the past? Or even if you did connect some predictive components on the platform, then you can start asking, okay, what is going to be your state in the future? So this is really first place, and this is in place already. And tomorrow, we really think that this API will allow us to build the complete ecosystem for digital twins. Next slide, please. So where we are today, just before we're discussing about standardization and the importance between to relate standardization and open source. And here it's really what we are doing. So we have set up a working group between FIWARE Foundation and the IISc, which is a group in ETSI in charge of developing NGSI-LD. And this group is meeting every 2 weeks. And there we started by looking at a number of use cases which have been reported on urban digital twins, water networks, airports, and so on. And from that, we said, okay, these specifications are quite interesting if we want to build digital twins in this domain or in this domain. And now we are looking further to this specification. And one notable example is digital twin description language of Microsoft. That they provided, and there's an ongoing mapping with NGSI-LD, which is taking place. And Microsoft is involved in it, and the Smart Data Model Initiative of FIWARE Foundation is behind this as well. And position paper on digital twins has just been released, so maybe Juan will say a few words later on that, but it's available already for you. What comes next? As we are working with ETSI, we work with formal documents, specification, and so on. And what we have is a work item, which is something in ETSI which says, okay, we are going to work on that topic. And that work item says we have to deliver a group report, NGSI-LD for digital twins by mid of July. So this will come shortly, and it's being fed by the working group. And based on that and the analysis we are doing, we are analyzing the needs to extend NGSI-LD for digital twins management and operation. Maybe we can do it as it is today, but we feel that, okay, for acquisition services and these kind of things, maybe we'll need to get the specification to evolve. And in parallel, I was saying that we are doing mapping with other standards, so to two threads of activities. The first one on Industry 4.0, where we're looking at the asset administration shell concept. And we think that NGSI-LD API can play a big role there as well to interact with these assets through this asset administration shell specification. And because NGSI-LD is spatial but also geo information, then we are looking how to integrate a bit further with 3D representation like CTGML for urban digital twins or the IFC, which are quite used in the building information management. So if you want to join, please, you do not hesitate, it's free. We have meetings every 2 weeks. You can contribute and give your voice to that. Thank you.
Okay, about data spaces, it will be me. Move to the next slide, and very quickly, because actually the following session to this one is about data spaces. Data spaces, you know, are the kind of soft infrastructures and related services that you may put in place in order to support a trusted and effective data exchange among different parties. And what is the vision of FIWARE in that respect is clearly is not about exchanging any kind of data. Is about really exchanging the core data that is part of any kind of powered by FIWARE system, like digital twin data. Because we really believe that in order for data spaces to be really effective, the different participants have to speak the same language. That means using the same data exchange API, that would be NGSI-LD, standard data models, and a common mechanism and framework for what means identity manage and access management. So therefore, the whole vision we are developing in that area has to do with taking choices and adopting this common language among participants. Moving to the next, where we are, there is a data space Roadmap working group in place. We invite all the community that is part of FIWARE to really join if you are interested in this topic. We have just released a position paper on data spaces, and that was published and is accessible, and we'll summarize, we'll give you a perspective about what is our vision and what we are trying to implement. Starting with FIWARE Release 8, we have created a specific section in the catalog comprising a description of all those components. Not all components in the FIWARE catalog are particularly tailored for and connected to the topic of data spaces, but some of them are, and we are going to highlight those and how they can be integrated together for creating this sort of soft infrastructure and global services you need for creating data spaces. Several flagship projects are in place, and then this is what is helping us to really make progress following a driven by implementation approach, and indeed very much connected to the fact that all these projects are getting now connected, and they have just decided to work together. We have created and launched what we are considering. The name is not definitive, but the draft name that we are using is Frontrunner Data Spaces Group, and where I'm happy to share that associations as important as DDBA and IDSA would be willing to join forces with us towards creating and accelerating the delivery of data spaces based on these technology choices. What comes next is how to analyze how to reconcile some of the concepts that in these projects are a bit still not properly integrated, and they have to do mostly about identity, how to reconcile the concept of IDS connectors with the more, let's say, state-of-the-art identity and access management functions based on widely adopted standards like OpenID, Connect, or XACML. We also want to integrate with technologies like iShare satellite capabilities. We need to understand how to integrate data publications and marketplace services in a more complete manner, how to implement broker and discovery services, leveraging on data publication standards like DCAT and NGSI-LD as an API. And well, we plan to also evolve our position paper with the involvement of the different mission support committees to give a strong perspective in front of all policy makers about what would mean to create data spaces. Let's move to another topic, blockchain. So Harpreet.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Hango. Thank you for this opportunity. Now, the blockchain by itself, the state of art of this blockchain is giving you the immutability, and with the cryptography, it help you to make the data secure in the network. And with the FIWARE, that the vision is to create an audit-proof log of NGSI standard of the transaction. So if you see the vision, like the actions that we are doing in a context broker example, that we're doing a create, update, or any kind of operation, those itself, it's in a transaction. So we can immute those transactions by storing this transaction into a DLT's technology like IOTA or a blockchain, which will give to which will provide a transparency and traceability and the provenance of the data. And here, the vision is to leverage the NGSI standard to achieve the interoperability, as there's still technology, DLT technology lacks in a standard. So with the help of NGSI, we can achieve the interoperability. And also, sometimes we don't need to store all kind of information in a DLT blockchain. Sometimes we just need a couple of the information from the payload that we are submitting to the while creating or updating the entity. We can choose what kind of entity we wanted to persist. And we are building some components that will allow to integrate, to take the advantage of DLTs, even if you don't know about how this technology works from the previous. So can you please go to the next slide? So currently, we are building a set of components specifically focused on a private permissioned or a permissionless ledger. We are not into any kind of development track for the public and permissionless blockchain, where especially token or initial coin offering or a cryptocurrency get involved. The components that which is currently it's getting mature, and one of the components called Canis major adapter that is a part of a FIWARE 8.0 release. The main of this adapter is to support various DLT. Currently, it supports Ethereum clients and IOTA. It's aimed to submit the transactions in a powered by FIWARE architecture. So you can just simply, if you have existing FIWARE system running up, you can plug in and do some configuration and start doing the transaction, persisting those entity in a DLT as well. There are a couple of use cases, such as cattle chain. Is the main goal is to give a supply chain transparency in a supply chain. And also one project, a couple of POCs in a token project, they are using this adapter in their use case. The component is called a Taurus, which is ledger sync. The responsibility of this this component is to we can mention the configurations, and this will keep listening to all kind of events and action happening in your smart contract or on a DLTs or any specific kind of DLT you have, and it will make it available and off-chain, which you can easily query from your local storage, so that you don't have to connect to the mainnet or any test network in future. We also have a DLT roadmap which is running up, and there we invite all. If you are interested, then please drop me an email. Then you can join this group, and we actively brainstorming the new technology and new things. What coming next is we are currently working on bringing few new updates in a Canis major. Examples such as you can also encrypt the data before persisting it into a DLT based on your encryption algorithms. Recently, IOTA released a new version with supporting smart contract feature as well, and we are improving this adapter to support those things as well. Currently, all kind of transaction receipts are persist in a Canis major in local storage, but you will be able to persist in a context broker so that you can fetch the transaction receipt from the context broker only. We also exploring the opportunity to connect this adapter with the EPSI, which is a European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, and their network is based on a Hyperledger Besu and a Fabric. Apart from that, we were working on creating a Dlt Key Manager Integration, which is kind of a Web3 OAuth service, can allow you to integrate your wallets here using OAuth, and that can be get integrated with any kind of IDM. We have example Keyrock, and using the OAuth 2 process that you can integrate those wallets. And apart from that, audit contract integration is currently happening. With use of that, you will be able to audit all kind of requests or actions getting performed in your FIWARE system. And the SSI is self-sovereign identity is quite new, and we also working on integrating with the Keyrock IDM. So the DLT roadmap work is it's active, and if people that who wanted to join, please feel free to drop an email to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Harpreet. And now,
okay. So now we move to artificial intelligence and machine learning. Well, now there's a joke that said that people program machine learning in Scala in Python and in artificial intelligence in PowerPoint. This is due that even we are talking about artificial intelligence, in most cases we are talking about machine learning and similar things. We must take into account that FIWARE is the right element that you need to fit this kind of systems. Most of these systems always lack the need or the input for the right data in the right moment, especially real-time data. This means that to really build one kind of system that is based on artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms, you need the proper pipeline that sends the right data to this system. This is FIWARE, and here you will find that everything is perfectly tuned for you to use all the things that you are using in other environments, but in a more flexible way and very easy to connect to different infrastructures. Using the context broker, you can get very easily all the data flow inside your machine learning infrastructure. Here, we can really interconnect with all the environment that is related to the digital twin. This means that in order to put in production the part of machine learning that we learn and will help you to decide on how to behave or how to actuate in your digital twin, this is perfect for all of you for this. Really, the key for FIWARE is that it's supporting all the life cycle for the data. From the sources, all the sensors and the things in the intelligent environment, to cleaning and setting up the data properly in the context broker, later sending to data lakes or data serialization, or directly plugging into the machine learning algorithms. Also, both for training and also for putting it in production. Here, really, this will allow that it will go quite easy in a very flexible way, and you will have tools that help you fully integrated in the FIWARE environment that are really going to obtain this. Well, you know that something that is usually say that you have intelligence, but data you have wisdom. That is when you really know what to do with all this data, especially when you are using data that have a lot of things in the context. We are really moving to this field, and only you can get it in FIWARE due to the fact that you don't have a single source of data, but you have a lot of sources of data, but in context. This means that there is where you can extract really wisdom from the environment that you are converting in smart with your machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms. Next slide, please. So where we are now? First, we must say that we have a meeting for the roadmap on this is fully open to anyone that could join. Will be also each 2 weeks. So I recommend you that you get in contact with us. It's free and it's open to anyone that want to participate. So if you are really interested in it, please contact the working group and join the mailing list that will help you to go on this. Right now, we are supporting all the workflow for data in all the artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms, both for training and for deploying the models. This means that you have all the tools that you require, and using the generic enablers, we can really do all these kind of things. So right now, you can integrate the context broker with several of the most widely used machine learning frameworks like Spark, Scikit-learn, TensorFlow, Beam, or BentoML. This means that right now, without having to write code for this, you have all these things integrated via the different generic enablers, especially the Cosmos generic enabler. But well, here the data is flowing, and you need sometimes to be sure that the data is the one only arrives to the one that can use it. You must assure that everything have access control in all the process, and only the ones that could read some data is really doing this. This means that is not publish everything that it happens in some environments, but really have a model that allows you to have a very fine-grained data access control. And also we are moving also to data usage control, that is to assure policies on how the artificial intelligence and machine learning things are being done, that the ones that provide the data can assure that this happen in a very easy way. Well, with all these kind of tools, what is really appearing is service marketplace that, for example, that what is developing as KA Marks Plus and the i4 Trust projects, where you will get really a marketplace where you can buy these services already tuned. This means that you cannot have to go through all the process of tuning and training the different things, but you can buy the service once is there, and they will be intelligent ones. Well, this is what you have now, but what you will have in the next work that we are doing. We are going to integrate with Apache Airflow in order to have a better data engineering process for all these kind of things. This is easy now, but will be more easy under this tool. This means that we are moving to a MLOps model where you will be very easily handle all the phases for any kind of project related with data scientists and data engineering problems. This means that also, as you will see in data spaces, will be plug and play integration with this. This will be provided with, as you saw before, with the data spaces model. The difference will be fully integrated. And also we are working with getting some special developments that can help you with privacy problems. These are mainly federated learning, where you share the different sub-trained models and not the data, or homomorphic encryption, where you are training models with data that is encrypted. This is ongoing experiments, but we will hope to have this very early in production. And also, we will consider another field, that is how is the ethic of all these things, or how we can share with our clients the decision that we are taking with an ML system. We are working to have ethics and explainable AI. That means that we will have a really responsible machine learning solution. You know, this is sometimes the dark side of these things. everything works, but it's a black box, and we want to be able to explain all these kind of things. With this, I think that you have get the idea that artificial and machine learning is really easy with the FIWARE environment and with the version 8.0. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Joaquin. Okay, now it's my turn. I will elaborate a bit on robotics aspects. In particular, I am going to give an overview of the vision we are developing around FIWARE-based robotics use cases, as well as of the main activities and objectives associated with the robotics roadmap. Let's start with some comments on the vision that FIWARE-based robotic systems are developing. Here, as you see, the current vision we are materializing gravitates around the concept of agile production, which considers the robotization of production environments an instrumental aspect to cope with the challenges posed by turbulent markets, changing customer demands, small-sized loads, or high product customization. And well, the final aim is to use robotics to implement flexible automation lines, and therefore we can categorize all the use cases we are dealing with in FIWARE as a subset of the smart industry domain use cases. Going a bit more into the specifics of our use cases, we are considering three main elements in every single use case: a cyber-physical, robotized production environment, its digital twin, and a collection of applications, systems.
So I give the floor to the one that will be explaining robotics. That is the one that speaks next.
Joaquin, can you mute yourself? So where were we? Okay, we were talking about the specifics of every single use case. We have a cyber-physical robotized production environment, its digital twin, and then a collection of applications, systems, and organizations from the connected world that may interact with this production environment through its digital twin representation. In order to understand how we aim to build this digital twin representation of the world, it is important to describe which is the common structure we are using for the cyber-physical production environment. This structure includes the environmental elements. To us, environmental elements are all the resources, materials, factory layouts, workstations, intermediate and final goods, or even ready-to-sell products that are flowing through the production environment. On the other hand, we have the personnel, technicians, system integrators, engineers, production managers, business managers, and then the robotics assets. Since the boundaries between automation, traditional automation, and robotics is very blurred, we are aligning with the definition of OPC-UA, Robotics Companion, in which we have some base robot types, like articulated robots, SCADA robots, Cartesian robots, and also the logistics one, transportation robots like AGVs, AMRs, or drones. Besides some robot peripherals like cameras, depth cameras, or some specific sensors, and other industrial automation systems that can be combined with base robot types in order to create a complex robotic system. Then we are not only modeling physical things, but also conceptual. We are modeling robotics-based operations. We can consider this level of abstraction how the robot alters the world, and then robotics-based production processes. And this is how the robot brings value to the production environment. This is often tightly coupled with traditional SCADA, MES, or ERP features. And well, based on this description of the world, the great challenges come from the goal of building and conveniently maintaining a digital twin representation that meets the requirement of the use case under discussion. In FIWARE-based digital twins, the core representation is enabled by the context broker. And inside this representation, the term NGSI entity and digital twin become synonyms. They are built on all of them build upon harmonized data models, and the NGSI-LD API is the integration API that provides access to the whole digital twin representation. However, due to the complexity of robotized environments, besides this core representation, a number of representations may exist to meet specific requirements of a particular domain or use case. An example of these complementary representations include, among others, 3D world simulators, smart decision makers, orchestrators, or AI-oriented representations. In these representations, a FIWARE-ready component or architecture always exists, which is either responsible for creating the proper extension to the digital twin representation, or for interfacing to the system that is actually taking care of the advanced digital twin representation. Precisely in this context is where a number of FIWARE enablers are aiming to contribute, and powerful technologies like fast DDS, micro XRC DDS, ROS2, micro ROS, or other enablers like the OPC-UA agent, FIROS, already exist in the FIWARE catalog, and many others are emerging from strategic projects activities like the experiments in the IISc project. As a result, and despite the custom and opaque communications in robotics will always exist to enable very, very tailored specific features of industrial robotic systems, the NGSI-LD API becomes the standard interface that allows the robotics production environment to interact with a number of heterogeneous applications that might run locally in the edge, in hybrid cloud infrastructure, or even that are part of third-party systems or organizations from the connected world. So the powerful idea behind this vision is that all of these heterogeneous systems and applications can access to a harmonized digital representation of the production environment, which enables the interaction between physical and conceptual elements at multiple levels of abstraction, and they all use the same standard, the NGSI-LD API. So this is the whole vision we are creating around robotics, FIWARE-based robotics. And now is the turn to say where we are now and what comes next. Regarding where we are, the three key messages might be these ones. We are standardizing and supporting the development of digital twins for industrial robotic systems in agile production environments. And our means to do this is mostly by driving, contributing to, and taking the most out of de facto standards in open source robotics. And we also account for a dedicated working group in which we take the strategic discussions and define the necessary work streams. You are all invited to join. Besides this, which is where we are, we can go to what comes next. And in fact, as I said before, new components are coming next from the real-world deployments we are conducting in the IISc. We are also developing new smart data models for industrial robotic systems and processes. We are creating improved documentation and step-by-step tutorials to make it even easier to use these components. The future, what brings to us in robotics is intensive activities to continuously align with the Industry 4.0 digital twin standards. We are exploring and working towards a more efficient synchronization mechanism between the context broker representation and the CR physical production environment. And we are taking all our enablers towards a full compatibility with NGSI-LD, which is something that is part of the short-term roadmap. For sure, if you want to know more, join the digital twin session and the robotics session, in which some of the real-world deployments we are executing right now will present their results. That's all from my side. What I can say now is that please join the dedicated sessions we have following this one. We have sessions of data spaces, on blockchain, on digital twin, on AI, on robotics. Please, if they are of your interest, join there. And also take into account that in the lunch, we have table where some of us, the technical experts or the FIWARE team can join to elaborate a bit more on interesting ideas, or even you as a part of the audience can find the space to have an interesting discussion. So thank you very much, and see you in the lunch or in future sessions. Bye-bye.